Welcome to Shelter in a Time of Storm. My name is Roger Comstock. I preach for the Morrison Church of Christ in Morrison, Tennessee. As many of you know who've watched our program before, we deal with some very difficult subjects from time to time, and the purpose of our show is to try to help people maintain their faith and grow in their faith as they deal with the traumas of life, as we refer to the storms of life. Oftentimes our programs are not so much Bible-based, but dealing with specific problems. We have a special guest today, and we're going to do a series of programs. My guest today is Colonel Rickie N. Hagan. Rickie, welcome. Glad to have you with us.
Thank you very much, Roger.
And I want to explain what we're going to do. Brother, is it all right if I call you Rickie?
Yes, it is.
We're going to talk about some tough things today, and Brother Rickie is a member of the Lord's Church, and he is in the active military in the Army, and he's going to talk about some of his experiences, and more importantly, we're going to talk about how those experiences have affected his life. He acknowledges, and he's very open to share that he has post-traumatic stress disorder, PTSD, as we'll probably refer to it through the program. And he has been through some serious things in battle and in defense of our country. And Rickie, it's an honor to have you here. And thank you for your service to our country. Let me say also, before we begin our discussion, that we're going to talk about some things that are very raw. You may not want children to listen to these programs because he's going to be talking about some very hard things that he's experienced in his military career. And one of the things that we need to understand about post-traumatic stress disorder, that a number of people in different professions are vulnerable to PTSD. Certainly our military, and you may know other people who have served, and particularly served in combat situations that struggle with PTSD. Our policemen, our firefighters, our paramedics, people like that, and our military people who have to deal firsthand with traumatic events and the loss of life and serious injury and so forth. Post-traumatic stress disorder doesn't come from looking at a picture in a magazine or that type of thing. It comes out of personal experience and being directly involved in those kinds of tragedies. We all process those things in a different way. And for many people, particularly many of our military, that when they come home, they struggle with PTSD, and it affects every part of their life. And so that's some of the things that Brother Rickie is going to be talking about today. As I said, he is it correct to say a full bird colonel?
Correct. In
the U.S. Army. Right. And he has served, I think you told me, 37 years.
It'll be 38 this December.
38 years. And again, we appreciate your service. Just if you would like to talk a little bit about your military experience, just in general, how you got in the military, and did you volunteer? I guess you were, after it become all volunteer.
Correct.
But talk about the beginning of your career a little bit.
I did volunteer, but I was a little wild child, so I guess I sort of got corralled that way. I needed that discipline in my life, and at that time, and I joined the military when I was 18, and I'm probably very few that you'll find that's started as a private and made it to full bird colonel, maybe general one day. I worked my way up to staff sergeant, and then I decided to and applied and was accepted to OCS, Officer Candidate School, through the Kentucky Military Academy. It's a very rigorous course at the time. I would go back through combat before I'd go back through OCS. That's how bad it was. And got my commission, and then went from there. I'm a field artillery officer. I'm a Cav scout, logistician, and I'm an intelligence officer. My last 2 assignments was with the National Ground Intelligence Center, and the last one with the Defense Intelligence Agency. Probably my favorite one was as a battalion commander. I had a command of drill sergeants, and that was actually fun. So I taught 4 years at MTSU, ROTC, as assistant professor of military science. It was there when 9/11 hit, and I told my class, I had about 20 students from Army, and I had a couple Air Force students, cadets, and it was there that I told them that there'll at least be 3 or 4 of you all go to Iraq. The next week, one classmate come in and he said, "Sir, I got my orders." The next week, 2 more come in and said, "Sir, I got my orders." The 4th one was me. So I got picked out solo. One of the things that was hard for me that particular time was going solo. Most people go as a unit, and because of a lot of the MOS qualifications and skill sets I had, I popped up on the board as, "Hey, we need one of them." So my first orders was for 545 days, as opposed to,
wow.
Yes, wow, that's what I said. So I didn't care to go, but I'm like, come on, So, but anyway, I was attached to a unit down in Baton Rouge, Louisiana, and so set sail from there.
And you served in Iraq.
Correct. From 2004 to 2006.
Now, were you involved in the Kuwait War, Desert Storm?
No, it's before. I actually I was called up, and it was over in 3 or 4 days.
Yeah.
So by the time, they could even start to process me, it was go home. And which, by the way, is how war should be done.
Yeah, I would tend to agree.
Yeah.
It becomes too much of a political game, and I think most normal Americans would agree with that. I would think.
We need the politicians to get out of the military and let our generals and our officers and people that's trained to do this job. We got a misconception that soldiers that the policemen are there to protect and serve. Our job is to train as you fight and fight as you train. We're there to take people out. If you don't, they're going to take you out. And when you do politically correct things like we're trying to do now, and don't worry about hurting people's little feelings and things like that, that's why you get in the situations that we're in right now.
Yeah, absolutely. I know and I didn't tell earlier when I introduced you, Rickie and I came to meet each other in Guyana, in South America.
Yes.
I've been involved in the mission work there for about 10 years, and this was Rickie's first trip to Guyana. And he joined into our team and worked with us, and he just became one of us very, very quickly. And we struck up a friendship, and he's been a great encouragement to me in my spiritual life, and I greatly appreciate him for that. And from our talking, you've told me, I don't remember, I know you've been from combat, you've received a number of honors, a number of medals. That may not be the correct term, military term, but you want to talk about that a little bit?
Well, but both medals, awards, or whatever. I was awarded a Combat Action Badge and a Bronze Star. I have declined the Purple Heart because of the fact at that time, and I've been diagnosed with TBI, traumatic brain injury, and post-traumatic stress syndrome. So, but none of the guys, and that's what that's why I agreed to come here, Roger. None of the guys would at that time consider that as an injury. When you go and see guys losing their legs, their arms, you walk through the hospital and you see literally body parts everywhere, or you see soldiers blown up, or the worst case scenario, brothers in arms that lost their life. They give it all. You don't want to really bother anybody with your so-called what you think petty injuries. Yeah. One incident, I dived in a bunker and lost use of my thumb, and had to get it operated on. You know, they put you to sleep, they operate you on. I never told my family or nobody that. It's just, you know, get on back to business, because it's horrendous. It's horrific to some of the stuff that you go through day by day, and knowing when you go outside the wire, what we call going outside your camp, your base. When you go outside the wire, you know, the odds are real good that somebody ain't gonna come back alive that day, or all in one piece. So to say, you know, to cry foul, that I'm feeling post-traumatic stress syndrome. I've got traumatic brain injury from the bombs, the mass blast explosions that are going off. You know, at that time, nobody would really want to stand up and do that. And if you look back at the, you know, Patton and the movie Patton, that's one of the reasons that he slapped the two soldiers.
Right.
And he called them cowards, because the guy was literally shell-shocked, and you know, who knows what was in the soldier's mind at the time, but the World War II veterans are without a doubt the toughest generation it's ever been in America. So for him to do that, hey, we studied that. We studied in Command General Staff College, War College. I mean, it's not like you know, that don't resonate with all the soldiers.
Yeah. Would I remember as a kid referring to different veterans who didn't act the way everybody thought they ought to act, as referring to them as shell-shocked. Is that the same thing as post-traumatic stress disorder?
Well, first of all, I have a problem with the way everybody else thinks.
I understand.
You know, Americans and Christians and the church, they need to get way, way, way from that judgment seat.
Sure.
And until you've ever walked in that man's shoes,
right,
stay away from it.
Yeah.
You can't compare. I've heard preachers, you know, just even recently say, with the times we're dealing with, you know, if a man come up and stuck a gun to my head and this is what I would do, you don't know what you would do.
Exactly.
You know, Columbine, Sandy Hook, you know, whatever it is, you don't know. But absolutely shell-shocked. I've seen brothers in my war that they're younger than me, and they're completely broke down. I mean, they're a mess, and you can't, you know, you just, some of that is so obvious. You can't fake that stuff.
And so the traumatic brain injury wasn't so much a I don't know how to say it right, a blow to your head as far as a cut, a wound, but was more like from concussion and the noise,
correct,
and so forth.
Well, if you study it, you know, you have, and I do the analogy of the nuclear bomb. It's so obvious because when it goes off, it mushrooms up and it goes out everywhere. Well, them shock waves from that are coming. And I remember my first go around. If you've ever been, you know, not paying attention and walking and miss a step, how it jars your.
Oh yeah.
You ever done that?
Yeah.
Everybody's done it. Well, that's a little dose of, you know, what was that? You know, the magazine I showed you earlier that showed the people that was doing the face painting, and it's a part of a therapy right now that they're expressing how they feel inside on their painting. But one of the guys he quoted in there was saying, you know, I felt like my inwards was taken out and turned upside down and put back again, just like that. You can't tell people, you know, you can't, and people can be stupid, you know, with their Americanisms and how the Hollywood does it. And you know, I get asked a lot, have you seen did you go see American Sniper, Old Dark 30? I'm like, I lived it.
Yeah. I
don't need to go see it.
Yeah. Well, and part of the reason I ask you that, because we have in our mind that if there isn't blood, there's no injury, and that's why I ask you that concussion. I mean, as a kid with fireworks, M80s. I mean, you could feel. I mean, that's a small fraction of what you experience, but you could feel the concussion from it, and rattling your brain is bound to do damage, and after repeated, and I'm sure some of those times that it went on continually.
Well, there's a reason why God put our brain in a hard shell.
Yeah.
And you know, when it gets knocked around like that, you know, things can happen. I mean, you see the NFL are dealing with that.
Yes.
In a huge magnitude.
Yes.
Well, you know, times about 10,000 and they started out when the war started out. The guerrilla tactics that they used, they kept moving the bar. We moved this way, they moved that way, whatever. But the bombs kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger.
Right.
And you know, when you can be going down the road and you can make a Humvee completely disappear, and it rains down fragments, you can't fathom that, Roger.
Yeah.
You can't. People can't fathom that unless you've been there and done it, smelt it, seen it.
Yeah.
You can't comprehend that.
Yeah. If you would talk a little bit about assignments that you've had, and maybe numbers of men that you've had under your guidance and so forth, and in combat situation. Well,
most of my major assignments where I was commanding was mostly stateside. My situation in Iraq was probably very unique, without a doubt, but different probably from any unit. See, we want to look at things like in the way the military is structured: company, platoons, you know, battalions, brigades, divisions, and them numbers just keep getting bigger at the theater corps level. But my assignment was basically solo, and me and my good friend Sergeant Purnell, and we done theater support command, and what the unit in Baton Rouge done was basically do all the logistics supplies for everything going in and out of the theater. So they managed all that. So they had a forward and a rear base. They had one back stateside, and they had one in Kuwait, and then nobody was basically going forward. And the new two-star at the time, which I really thought a lot of, and I'm going to stay away from some names and
Sure.
things. I work in a top secret classified environment, and there's no sense in getting, you know, too in depth with
Sure.
people's names, nomenclatures, identities. It's irrelevant. But he was a great guy, and he's seen the need that we need people liaison-wise, at least in Iraq. So me and Sergeant Purnell volunteered, and so it was basically go up there and hook up with the 82nd Airborne, 1st COSCOM, and find your way. Take care of yourself. Yeah. So luckily we had run into some boys from Tennessee, and we managed to get a tent of our own, and then we started procuring stuff. That's what we call in the military. It's when you get stuff, and you can figure that out however you want to. And we procured 2 Humvees, and so we done pretty well. But most of my stuff was, you know, I catch a helicopter ride or a convoy going somewhere, and my job was to collect intel data and logistical data and things like that too. So.
What?
And by the way, that has an impact because you don't have the camaraderie. You don't have the when you take a National Guard unit, say from Tennessee or Kentucky or whatever, them's homegrown people. Right. The families, they get the big send off, and they get the big homecoming and all that stuff. And when you go solo, you're solo.
You don't get the big parade.
Well, you don't get the parade, but you don't get the setup, like when a unit comes in a theater, here's where you'll be sitting at. This is all your area and your area of operation, blah, blah, blah.
So you mean as far as the fellowship with fellow soldiers?
Absolutely.
I see what you're saying.
See, I had and I was fortunate. We was fortunate because I had the Tennessee Guard was on both sides of us. And you couldn't ask for but no better. I mean, country boys are country boys. And I mean, it really worked out well. And we returned the favor. When we left, we pitched the keys to the Humvees and the tents to the Tennessee boys, so you know they got free Humvees and stuff. But
Well, and before we maybe get into some more details, maybe in our next program, about if you can sort of trace cause and effect sort of thing, as far as you personally and the post-traumatic stress disorder. Let me touch, you mentioned, and I forgot to mention earlier in the program, for those who may be interested, there is an issue of the National Geographic, I believe it was February 2015 issue of the National Geographic, that has an extensive article about post-traumatic stress disorder and the therapy that or some of a type of therapy that goes with that. And part of the reason we're doing these programs is to help people understand, to help the general public understand and be a little more understanding, a little more sympathetic. And one of the things that, Rickie, that I've heard you say a number of times, you've mentioned it already here today, that we need not be so quick to make judgments when we don't know what's going on in that person, or where they've been and what they've been through, and what they've experienced. But we're pretty quick to make a judgment about those situations, and usually unfair judgments.
Absolutely.
Is there any specific incident that happened with you in Iraq that you want to share?
Well, the first, it never sets in until I can remember getting on the tarmac and getting on the huge jet. We're packing our weapons, something that you never do, and they're treating you like kings, and it's a 20-hour flight, and you just eat all you want, do as much as you want, and everything, and it don't set in. It never sets in. But you train as you fight, as I said earlier. Fight as you train. That's what we're designed to do. Mm-hmm. You created something. You can't take a knob and say, now turn him back off.
Right.
It don't work that way. But America, and hear me plain, America, these politically correct, Americanized, and for the most part, spoiled Americans. Right. I want you to go over there and take care of everything, but then when you do a 9/11, go get them, boys.
Yeah. But
then when they ain't, hey, turn that thing off.
Right.
Come back over and sit down, heal, boy. That kind of stuff. Yeah. And it don't set in. Mine, I can remember just like yesterday when that plane landed, and when they opened the door in Kuwait and that hot air hit you in the dark, you're in another country, then you realize, we're in the game. Mm-hmm. And then it just starts. I'm coming in on 2004, done started in 2003. So, year after year after year, they experience the same thing I do. You're coming in and hey, and that's the one thing about the military and brothers in arms. We're a family like no other. Because one thing about it, you don't leave nobody behind one way or the other. And as opposed to, again, the Americans, and I almost said it. I may ruffle some feathers today, and I really don't care because of how sissified we become, and don't say that, and don't too easy. But I didn't. You get into the rhythm, and you're in combat, you're in war, and it's kill or be killed. And it really didn't set into me until you come home. And I think all the brothers would and sisters would say the same thing. Because you're there.
Right.
You smell it. You feel the heat. Nobody's different. Nobody's immune to it. Right. It's when you come home.
Right.
It's when it sets in.
When we all expect you to come back to the person that left.
Exactly. Yeah. My first leave was horrible. It was horrible. I think I had 10 or 12 days, and I come home and then anxious to see my girls and everything, my family, and I can remember my brother saying, which I was pretty buffed up, and that's all you do is work out, you eat, sleep, and go get ready for another mission. And I can remember him saying, man, you changed. And it's still with me today. It wasn't so much as what he said as how he looked at me, like,
what's wrong with you?
Yeah. And I didn't want to get out of the house. I didn't want to see people. And one day, I think maybe I had a couple days left, and I ventured to Walmart, and that was a big mistake. I know everybody in the town that I live in almost. I was a city councilman there for 6 years, and it was like it was just coming at me like a movie. Just people was like, "Oh, Rickie," you know. And it's just, and it overwhelmed me, and I almost went into a panic mode of, you know, because I wasn't looking at it like people. Your mind and your body, the adrenaline goes so high, and it starts taking over, and you just, it's just like coming at you, you know, stuff coming at you. And you know, to this day, every building that I go in, every restroom, church, restaurant, whatever it is, you know, I case it from top to bottom.
Sure.
And I think anybody else that you said you talked to some before, but it's just like in my mind, it's like a movie. It's just scanning, you know, and you're looking for any kind of threats that you might have to, you know, take out or deal with, right, that could potentially harm you at that millisecond.
Right.
You know, so, and then it goes.
See, and that's one of the facets that non-military people don't understand, why you can't turn that off.
Well, even the psychologists and you know, none of the doctors can. I mean, they understand what it is, and they're trying different. Hey, one therapy or one prescription ain't going to work for everybody.
Well, sure.
There's no way.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've said this 1,000 times. I'm very blessed. God is why He's kept me alive. I don't know. I've missed death so many times, but providence and me meeting you and us talking on a dirt road in Guyana. And which led to this right here, but it's there's no one treatment. I mean, these younger guys, I don't see how they deal with it. I mean, right. And when I've got 20 years on them and some maturity and wisdom and trying to break down, I don't see how 18, 19, 20-year-old deals with it. And you see why our suicide rate
exactly
is the way it is.
That's just it. They don't deal with it. They don't know how. And by the time, it seems to me, just me observing, it seems by the time we figure out, we as a culture or as a society, when we figure out there's a problem, it's almost too late for many. Many have already maybe taken their own life or
but you could be proactive in me thinking, hey, they're going to war here. What do you think they're going to do?
Exactly.
Eat cupcakes?
But why haven't we learned that? Is that just political correctness, or why haven't we learned that?
Well, a lot of it, it's all about me world right now.
Yeah, that's true.
America's all about self.
Right.
What can you do for me? If I can, I toss you to the side.
Yeah. What's in it for me?
Yeah.
We need to close for this program, but we, as I said at the beginning, we're going to do some other programs. I'm not sure just exactly how many, but we've tried to warn that some of the things are very difficult to talk about, but we greatly appreciate Brother Rickie, and that he's willing to expose himself for the benefit of other people. I hope you have a great day.